Hey, what's up, guys? How y'all doing, man? Look, you made it this far. This is the fourth day of me sharing with you guys story time with Akio Evans. Today, I wanted to touch bases on some of the things I used to do in high school. Uh, and I used to have a lot of hustles. One of my first jobs that I ever had was before high school. Actually, I was 14 years old, and I used to work at the Power Center, which now is a school. But growing up in East Baltimore, and me and my family, as I shared with you guys before, we moved a lot. So, you know, um, when I had decided to go to high school, I really wanted to go to the Baltimore School of the Arts, but the Baltimore School of the Arts, they, uh, had me audition, and I didn't get it because I think, I was told that my monologue was short. So they said, hey, you can still shadow. We want you to come back to try out. When I went to the auditorium, when I shadowed and I was looking at, people that was in the school, I started seeing some people, they was doing like ballet, doing splits, flips. I didn't know how to do none of that. You know what I'm saying? So, I just felt like I was out of place. So what I do, I decided to, give up my dreams is wanting to be an actor. And I went to my sister's school. My sister, she went to Northern Senior High School. She was a junior. And I was like, you know what, I'm just go there. You know what I mean? And I never looked back. My dreams and aspirations as an actor. And it's funny, right? Because when I go places, people always ask me, am I an actor? Because sometimes I can be animated if you catch me on a good day. You know what I mean? All in good laughter. But I decided to go to Northern, and it was Northern um, where I developed my gifts, not only with making clothes, but also with film. Because I had a media class. I also had a home economics class where we were sewing. And I also had, met my friend Jazz, who I found out later in life he was my cousin, but he was the one who actually wore like these baseball MLB patches, patch jeans that he had got this guy BJ to do. BJ used to play for the football team, but he would also like do airbrushing. He would make his own outfits for, the Northern Vikings. But when I seen Jazz with these jeans, I was like, yo, I gotta get me a pair, bro. But look, I got some NBA sheets. You think you can cut some NBA sheets up for the NBA teams, the logos? He was like, yeah. So then I connected with BJ. I gave him a whole sheet, and he had put some teams on my jeans, but it wasn't to the amount that I thought he should. It was like maybe about 5, 6, 7 teams on there, and I was displeased. I wanted my whole joint decked out. So when I got him, I was like, man, Jazz was like, yo, what's wrong, yo? I said, yo, I ain't really thought that it would be like this. He said, well, yo, why don't you do it yourself? I said, well, I don't even know how he did this. He said, man, all he used was a glue gun and puffy paint. So I went to the craft store, finally got me some puffy paint and some glue guns, and I already had my own sheets. Started cutting some stuff out, put it on the pants, revised that design, which was my original design for the NBA patches. And at this time, y'all, I want to keep in mind, I know you guys seen Supreme with all the NBA logos on the hats, on the jackets. At this time when I was doing it, nobody had it, so um, it wasn't until years later after I did it and after I went along with doing it as people would, like my sister, she had got a skirt out of me. She, wanted a skirt made, and she played for AAU. She traveled to Hawaii. She traveled all over. And my cousin Aaron, he had the NBA whole denim jacket, which I was going to wear, but I decided to wear like a whole NFL logo jean jacket because I didn't want him and I looking like twins, and I think that was for the Morgan homecoming. So anyway, back in high school, man, like I developed these skills, but I also, as I shared with you guys in previous videos, I always was going far left. I worked at Target. So when I worked at Target, I was, in charge of electronics, and they gave me the key to the back stock room, and that was then where it started to take a turn because I started to get away with taking like PS2s and Xboxes. That was the gaming systems at that time. And I would get away with taking like phones and, games. And, when I was having these items in my house, my mother was like, oh, how you get all this stuff? And I would lie to her and say it was back stock. Whole time I'm up there cleaning Target out. And then I started to see, people started to see when they would come over my spot when I would hook school, they started seeing my whole bedroom looked like a gaming center. They was like, yo, put me on. So then when I started putting my close friends on, word got around and people was like, yo, I heard that you the hookup guy. Yo, I want Madden. I want this. I want that. So I started to really like had that whole thing as a hustle, man. And I started selling like PS2s and Xboxes half off. It wasn't for the retail price, but then I started to get lazy. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the actual day, they would say, all Target cast members, please come by the to the front to make your last purchases. So me being in charge of electronics, I would always scan the items prior, and then I would, scan them and put them in bags, and that was my scapegoat. But at some point, one of my friends who wanted a game, he already paid for the video. He already paid for the game prior at school. But I said, yo, when you come by, just act like you got 3-1, so that way we can act like you got, some money, you know what I'm saying? So that way, we can transfer and it can look like on camera that it's $300 bills. He didn't have any type of funds on me because he gave me his last funds, but I said, yo, like you kind of making it hot. He said, yo, but you got the game because my people's waiting for me outside. And I was like, bro, you making it hot, bro. But I thought that on this day that I wasn't going to get caught. So I went on ahead and just, because he already paid, just went on ahead and just act like he, did a little transaction there. And that's how things got, hot. And it was, so yeah, that was Target. And of course I, got caught eventually on Halloween. I wore a Michael Myers mask and a Dickie outfit with the Timbs, and they took me to the back and they questioned me. They was like, hey, look, if you just give the people up, we don't have to necessarily charge you for what, was taken. But I didn't say anything. And, they took me to the bookings, and then I was a minor at the time. So, my mother, I remember she was so upset because she had to take off just to go to like these shoplifting classes. And she even said, and I was looking at the videos that they were showing us, it was like they was training us to steal. And they was, because I got even more skilled with that. I didn't stop after that. I started doing other things, but my hustles was, doing clothing. And when I started working at Target, I was no longer the hookup man, but that didn't stop me from actually trading in games at Soundgarden or any place that you can transfer games from funding. And how you do anything is how you do everything. So I started taking things from my own family. You know what I mean? And that's when I started spiraling into this other version of myself. You know what I mean? That wasn't, I've learned from a lot of mistakes, and I'm not that same person anymore. But yeah. So I also used to make my own IDs. So like I said before in the first video that I ever posted about me quitting alcohol, I was the guy that was making IDs, So I was your all around guy. Whatever you needed, I had it. And that hustle, as far as me doing schooling with the media class, that's what actually gave me, because I always wanted a camera, man. Always wanted a camera. So when I was working at Target, I was able to take my first camera. That camera that I took, even though it was bad, same camera that I took, I was able to document the last moments of my brother walking out of the house on Thanksgiving. That was like in 2001. And he was in his early 20s at the time. And I was a teenager, so I thought that was old at the time. But Black Friday, he had gotten into a car accident. Sunday, he was still kind of, with us, but he started losing the clear gel from his brain from the impact of the car accident. And then Monday, after Thanksgiving, he passed away. And that right there, I think that shook me in a way. I wasn't working at Target anymore. Even I hooked him up a few times with Game Boy Advances and all the gamings. But yeah, man, when I lost my brother, man, because we had just reconnected later in my teenage life, and it was really heartbroken. I was heartbroken by that. And but when I see how fragile life was, I started like going ham. You know what I mean? That's an old Baltimore terminology. I started going hard, you know what I mean? And started like doing things because I was like, yo, you only got one life to live, that type of thing. I got a tattoo without my mother knowing. And I lost my virginity at like late 16, you know what I mean? And I just was going at it. But with that, those experiences that I've experienced in high school, it definitely shaped me So when I went to Baltimore School of the, well, I couldn't go to Baltimore School of the Arts to say yes to that gift and say yes to that dream that I was inspired by. It opened up the other opportunities for me to make clothes and also develop my filming skills, my patience. When I actually edit videos, I look at it like, yo, I'm creating um, basically a video game, and then when I'm finished editing a video, it's like I beat the game. So, but yeah, I told y'all I'm not gonna keep y'all that long. I ain't want this joint to be 10 minutes, but just wanted to give y'all a rundown of, just what was my mindset in high school. And I'm just looking to just share with you guys the truth and share with you guys the story so you guys can, who those who may know or may not know, they can get another perspective of who I am, and I feel like, I'll get better at storytelling, but I'm thankful for you guys who've been looking at these. I've seen the views going up. I don't care if it's only one person. I'm just grateful for that. So thank you for your time, and just catch me tomorrow. More stories to come. Peace.